Hi, this is Dr. Maria Nemeth with the Coach Training Podcast. I'm a Ph.D. psychologist, a master's certified coach through the International Coach Federation, the founder and director of the Academy for Coaching Excellence. I am so excited to have you join me on this podcast series in which we look at coaching, what it is, what it isn't, what to expect from coaching, what to not expect from coaching. Join me and I'll see you throughout this podcast. We'll have a great time together. And I think you and I will learn a thing or two. See you then. Hi, this is Dr. Maria Nemeth. I'm a licensed psychologist, MCC coach, director and founder of the Academy for Coaching Excellence. And this is the Coach Training Podcast. In this podcast, what I hope and really desire to do is, number one, have real conversations about what coaching is and isn't, the things that you can expect from a coach, the things you can expect while you're being trained to be a coach. That's one aspect. The second is to provide you with some actual real coaching sessions so that you can, number one, hopefully get something for yourself. You know, I don't know if this is true for you, but every time I'm coaching someone, their courage really inspires me. So to see if there's something that you can get for yourself out of this coaching session, and at the same time, answer any questions that you might have. And if there are further questions, you have here on the podcast site where you can get a hold of me. I'd love to hear from you. But right now we have Carolina, and Carolina, I am just thrilled that you decided that you'd allow me to coach you on this podcast. So take a deep breath. You know, this is a big thing. You know, coaching, as you well know, the purpose of coaching is to have you see what it is that's important to you, see where you've been stopping yourself, supporting you to transcend that point so that you can take authentic action. But even more importantly, a coach is someone who knows who you are. A coach is someone whose only job, their only agenda is to support you in your agenda. And so that's what I'm here for today with you. Okay, just you and me. I'm here to support you in whatever it is you'd like to have some coaching on, maybe some result you'd like to produce. So welcome.
Hi, Maria. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
It is great. Now, why don't we start? What brings you to coaching? I know that, you're a busy woman and you do a lot of things in life, and actually to decide to come in for coaching is huge. So what would you love us to produce together out of this time? We'll have maybe about 20, 25 minutes together. What would you love? Today,
I'm bringing a topic to the table that's one that's been swirling around in my brain for a long time. And it's kind of vague enough because it feels like a big thing for me to not find any resolution around it. And so when this opportunity came up, I'm like, you know what? I'm tired of this thing swirling around in my brain. I'm ready for a breakthrough. So yeah, that's what prompted me to come, because it feels like a topic that I really need support on. And the topic is around me feeling more comfortable to step into what some would call like the limelight, to be more outwardly facing and publicly. You know, I have an ample network of friends and allies around the world, but it's really more of a one-on-one situation, or I'm supporting someone else that's kind of taking front seat or front of the room. And when it comes to activities, organizations, things like that.
Sure.
And yeah, so I'm wanting and I'm feeling inside of me that it feels like I'm meant to be more present as an inspiration for people in general. Like that's what my calling feels like. And I don't know, but I have all these like little voices in my head that keep me worrying, or they just keep me from embracing that. So many. So I'm not. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's clear that you do have a mission. You do have something that you want to be doing with your life. You do have a contribution that you want to make.
Yeah.
And, when we do have a contribution, when there is something that is there for us in our heart, it's almost like it won't let us go until we do something about it.
Exactly. That's exactly what it feels like.
Yeah. Tell me more about what it's like.
When I come and say to you, there's this thing that I know I need to do. It's not coming from my brain. It's coming from just this energy within my heart that's propelling me forward.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I know that it just is so. And so that there's not any doubt about it being true or not, because it's coming from this overwhelming feeling, from within.
I hear you. Mm-hmm. So let's see if we can narrow this down a little bit, or even get a little focus. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering if you might have something that in your heart you want to do, and you just haven't been doing it.
Mm. Yeah, I think the most concrete thing that is in my heart that I want to do, or next step is, creating a web page for myself for my coaching practice, and creating content for that page, so that, people can find me more easily, and that I can share my essence a bit. But then there are other things about I would love to put out music, be creative, just produce things and share them with the world, or share
art.
Put out
music, did you say?
Yeah, music. I would love to actually go forth and create things and share them with people. I also think about, I like to write and sending reflections about, I feel like I have a lot that I want to say. I'm also toying with the idea of how can I create inclusive language between the social justice movement and the environmental justice movement, because I find that they're the same thing, but sometimes they use different language based on where you're coming from, and finding ways to produce inclusive language so that you can. So just creative things that want to come out of me, like reflection. Things like that.
I can tell.
Yeah.
Give me an example of something creative that just wants to come out of you. Just something that you would write about. Yeah, we're not tying you down to any promise or anything, but just like, for instance, if you could only write, what is it that you might want to write about?
Yeah, there's something I really want to write about, which is, what I was just mentioning, I really want to write about how no matter what side of either activism or calling or mission that you come from within those justice movements, how can we create antidotes or metaphors that, for example, someone from the environmental side could understand what's going on the social side. So like, for example, the environmental side, we all talk about permaculture, nitrogen fixing plants, and how they change and can improve degraded soils. And I think, well, who are the nitrogen fixers in the social justice movement? How can we, define, and who are the bacteria that work with that nitrogen fixing plant, because those are the allies. So I'm starting to connect the dots, because I see, us in that holographic experience, like the fractal experience of, from the soil, quite literally to the soil, to somebody in a neighborhood in Oakland. What what are the similarities? What makes us so different? What makes us so similar? I feel like being able to create that language would much more easily let somebody from the environmental justice side feel more comfortable and starting to really understand the social justice side and feeling like they merge. Because we always say that, yeah, it's one and the same, but I still feel like there's some silo energy between.
This is so brilliant. I'm amazed. We're recording this, and I'm glad because for the heck of it, when you get a copy of this recording, you might want to write down exactly what you said, because that in itself is the beginning, number one of an article. I mean, I'm seeing it. Exciting article. How do we use metaphors to bring us together so we can see the similarities? Right?
Exactly.
And also you're talking about a website. So how do those two work together?
Well, the ideal client that I want to work with, or just in general scope of clients that I want to work with, are in the regenerative movement. And that can be, for me, anybody that's on the, coming from either of those justice sides, people that really know their purpose. Maybe they don't know the form, but they know their calling and they know that where they're headed towards. Or they do know exactly what they want to do, but for XYZ reasons, they're not being able to advance in whatever their project or piece of work is. And so I feel like what I'm writing about could be inspirational content for people that want to get coached on that. I also could see that content can lead towards workshops and even a book at some point, right, based off of like a book of metaphors, something like simple like that, but profound,
This is amazing. So what are you experiencing as you're telling me all this, Carolina?
As I'm telling you all this, I'm experiencing, I was just observing something where, part of my big worry of sharing myself with the world is I have a lot of views around, like I have a lot of qualms around the way that the world is. Obviously, that's why I'm so passionate about, we get back together, of course. But I have a fear. I'm recognizing the fear of if I share too much, then, they know too much. Like, where is my own privacy in that sense? And I started to, that's the one fear that keeps coming up. But then as I'm talking to you, what I'm observing is like, you can still share yourself and just go towards the positive route of things, and all the whatever negative thoughts you have, that doesn't necessarily need to be, it doesn't necessarily need to be, you can share it, and you can share it in a way that is positive.
Now, when you say you can share it, you're talking about you personally.
Yeah. I have a tendency to say you, and when I'm talking about myself or others, I just mean
all right.
One can, you know what I mean? One can. So I can. Yeah.
What happens when you? Well, wait. What happens when you say I can? What happens
if I were to change it and start to say I can?
Yeah, I'm just wondering what happens when you say I can instead of you can or one can. What happens when you say I can?
Yes. It's shifting the attention back onto myself instead of like bringing it, internal locus of control versus external locus of control. So now when I say I can, I'm taking responsibility for that. It's not just, I'm not just externally putting it out there in a vague way. So yeah, I see that.
So let's just kind of translate that down a little bit. So just it's simple. See, the thing about it is, it's clear to me, Carolina, you're very bright. You're brilliant. You have a brilliant mind, because I'm just seeing before me all these thoughts as they're coming out of your mouth, talking about the fractal, the hologram, looking at the metaphors. And I mean, it's just really rich, very rich. I remember an old saying, to him who much has been given, from him is much expected. To him that much has been given, from him or her is much expected. You know those doubts and fears that you have?
Yeah.
It is so normal to be experiencing what you're experiencing, even, Carolina, even as you're talking to me about your ideas and what you could do. Because I could see a paper coming alive. I could see your website coming alive. I could see the ideal clients starting to line up. I'm wondering if that was the same for you. Were you having that experience?
When I start to,
Yeah, as you were talking about it. Uh-huh.
Well, even when you said that quote, that really hit me very hard because it's true. It's really true. And I feel like personally a very privileged person, and I just feel very blessed in with what life has given me. And I feel that the way that who I am is it brings that responsibility to share what I can. So
incidentally, yeah. So is it responsibility or is it a privilege?
it's a privilege.
You know, it's a privilege. You know, I don't know. You know, you and I, you've taken courses from me, and so you've heard me talk about different things. But I don't know if you've heard this. Once when I was teaching a course in California at a place called Esalen Institute, I was. It was on forgiveness, and I was watching the sunset over the ocean.
Mhm.
And a young man came and sat next to me. He was in the course I was teaching. And we got to talking and talking. And he said, you know, I learned something this year. My dad passed away. And, you know, I, of course, said I was so sorry to hear that. And he said, yeah, but listen, I learned something. He said, I was with my dad for the few weeks before he passed. And about a couple of weeks before he died, in one of his lucid moments, he said to me, you know, I have to tell you something. Everything that I thought was a responsibility or an obligation, I now see that it was a privilege. Even taking out the trash, it's all been just a privilege. Now, what might it be like for you just to honor that you are standing at this point and you're about to take steps to make some things a reality? And you've got this brain that's just yammering at you. And it says, Carolina, who are you to do this? And people are going to get too close and they're going to get to know you too much and all that kind of stuff. And every time it does that, every time it says these things, you listen. You might think it really means something. But here you are at this point. Now, one of the things I've discovered is that when we're at this point, it's like a point of mastery. And please excuse me for giving you this 2-minute quick lecture. But we have this brain that hasn't changed much in 100,000 years. That's what science is finding. And 100,000 years ago, even 25,000 years ago, this world was a pretty dangerous place to live in. You could go outside of your cave and there'd be a tiger. And we didn't have fangs or fur and we couldn't run very far, but we had this brain that could look for every danger that would possibly happen. The psychologists are now calling it the negativity bias. And those of us who are alive today, We're alive because we inherited this tendency in our brain to look for danger. Because your brain still thinks that there's a tiger outside of the cave. It says, Carolina, I don't care what you think. There's this tiger. So what would it be like to just have some compassion for this poor brain of yours and just take the step that's there for you to take?
Maria, do you mind if I just put one of my fears out there that I haven't put out there yet? Just so it's...
Please make it be a great, just, on the fear-o-meter, let it be a big fear. What is it?
It's ultimately, I worry about putting myself out there because I'm not in agreement with how the world is being run now. And I'm afraid of putting myself into that space more and more and more. It can actually put me at risk because I think about all the activists that get killed every year, or rather than killed, or just like either attacked in different types of ways or killed, That's like my big fear, truly. Getting put on some list or, and it's not a crazy thing to think because it happens all the time. That's why it stays with me, because I don't think it's a very out there thought, but I would like to overcome that so that that doesn't hold me back from doing what I think is most important, what I really am here to contribute, which is inspiration.
So, now, and that right there is the brilliance. You're here to inspire people. What do you see about that?
Yeah, I see that can't recognize that I can't change anybody or anything, but I can provoke inspiration. And I think that's the best thing I can contribute in many different ways. And I guess as I'm seeing that energy around it being inspiring doesn't really include the other energy of worrying about being attacked or...
It doesn't. But you use the word provoke inspiration.
Yeah.
Say more about provoking inspiration.
I wonder if it's sometimes because I've been speaking a lot in Spanish, then my English has started to change and it uses certain verbs that are more used in Spanish. But maybe either way, I'm using the word provoke. So that's a good question. I guess it's what I wanted to say with provoke is just like catalyze, to create the conditions for inspiration.
Now that's, yeah.
Sounds better.
What are you seeing?
Yeah, there's two different energies for sure. Completely.
Oh God, this is so great. Because when you said the word provoke, I saw you poking a beehive with a stick. I'm going to provoke inspiration in these bees as they come after you, right?
Yeah. Which is exactly what I am trying which is what I'm afraid of receiving on the other end. So that's pretty funny.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
See if that works. Yeah.
You just saw something.
Yeah, that I did. I saw that the way that my approach to creating that contribution in the world, or, challenging the way that things are so that new things can emerge that are more harmonic and create a sort of sense of homeostasis within all beings on the planet, that it doesn't have to be that method, which I actually causes incoherence in me, is like I appreciate people that are out there doing what they need to do, fighting on on the street, fighting or criticizing out front certain people. I think everybody has a role and everybody has a place and everybody needs to do what they need to do. It's needed, but it's not me to do that. Even though I appreciate that there are people doing that because it's needed. It is, but I'm not that person.
and as you're saying this, you have the best smile on your face.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't need to make it that complicated. Like, I don't need to become someone that I'm not, because I think that's what has to happen. I can do it in a very positive, charming way.
really, which ultimately, I think your message will get through a little more easily. So to get back to, God, this is a great conversation. I could talk with you about this for hours. And let's look. So out of our conversation, what is it that you see? What are you willing to do? What's going to come out of our conversation together?
I'm thinking.
Just take your time.
Okay, thank you.
And might I say, it could be a small, sweet step. Nothing huge, but something.
Well, I wonder, the first thing that came to my mind, I don't know if it's too big or not, so I'm just going to share it with you.
Okay.
But the idea that came to my mind first was just the word manifesto, sort of like taking the time to write, a one-page, no longer than one-page manifesto about how my sort of like visionary statement of how I want to show up in the world from a public place.
I think that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you write that down right now?
Okay.
As I said, I know you're going to be listening to this tape, but to this recording, I'm still back in the days when we had tapes.
Maybe they'll be in again in the next year.
Maybe, huh?
I wrote it down.
So, and giving you some advice again. For our audience, it's really not in the role necessarily of a coach to be giving advice. And so I'm, trading on my existing relationship with Carolina in giving her all this advice. But I came to something in talking and in writing myself, which is this. It's not what I need to say that's important. It's what they need to hear.
Exactly. That makes all the difference. It does, because when I'm focusing on what I need to say, that can make the whole thing just all the thoughts all swirling into one place, and it becomes a little cluttered and complicated. And I think there's a space for that, but it's for what we're looking at now. You're right. It's what do they need to hear? And that's why, the whole thing of me wanting to inspire, it's What do they need to hear? Because it's all about empowerment in oneself.
There you go. That's it. Mm-hmm. Oh, and so by when will this one-page manifesto be written?
Let me
be gentle with yourself with this. This is huge.
When you say gentle, do you mean like don't force too quick?
Well, it's more like what if you considered that this is like your first draft of the manifesto?
Don't try to make it too perfect.
Exactly.
Yeah, I gotcha. Okay, cool. Let me look really quickly at my calendar. 1 second.
I'm thrilled that you're looking at your calendar.
I can have it by Monday evening.
I know you can have it by Monday evening. The question is, will you have it by Monday evening?
Yes. I will have it by Monday evening, and I will put it in my calendar to do so.
By what time?
By 9 p.m.
By 9 p.m.?
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Now, might there be one or two people that you could have support you in doing this? Because if you're like many of us, it's so great to tell a couple people what we're going to do so that they can cheer us on throughout because this is that'll be like 3 days. So they can cheer us on. How are you doing with this, Carolina? What's happening with it?
Yeah,
Will you read it to me when you're finished? All that stuff.
I have 4 people that are within 100 square meters of me.
Okay, great. Okay.
I could read them.
Perfect. So what are you experiencing right now?
I'm just recognizing how much my attention has just been going towards this sort of space that was making it complicated and adverse and, like scared, when really, truthfully, deep down, who I really am is just wanting someone to spread, positive, inspiring energy and make people, and not make people, but inspire people to know that it is possible to heal the planet. It is possible to heal ourselves. And it's not and there are clear steps that you can take to do it. And they're unique steps to you, And when I think about that.
Yeah. And that people can work together. Remember that as we began talking about these metaphors and, that it's possible for people, no matter where they are, to find ways of working together.
Of understanding, of seeing, like understanding across places that typically might create divides.
Yes, exactly.
For whatever reason, not necessarily like I'm on purpose.
No,
but just happens.
That's
and
it.
For me, it's important. I love language, and I believe every language one learns, they're opening and expanding their consciousness more, because you're grasping ideas and thoughts that you had no way to put words to in other languages. So it's all about that for me, is like, how can I communicate in a way that can really hit home to somebody, and they're the ones that are really going to know what's important to them.
Fabulous.
But just reminding them it is possible. It is possible. Because honestly, like if I were to say, no, it's not possible, then what's the point? Like, what's the point?
What's the point?
Like, you have to it's about believing. If you really want to bring change into the world, it's about making that conscious decision without knowing really if it's just, that's what you decide. That's what you believe in.
Brilliant. You are a brilliant, good-hearted woman. And it has been my pleasure. And I'm grateful to have coached you through this. And if and when it's ready, I would love to read your manifesto.
Oh, thank you, Maria. I will gladly share it with you. And I'm very appreciative. What's funny is I just didn't, I really expected this to be such a big, powerful experience, like, like fighting against something. And, it's funny how one can expect those things. And it was just so effortless in a sense.
There you go. Sweetie.
Which was cool.
Good on you. So here's to a productive weekend for you. And I look forward to reading what you wrote. But until then, be well. And I just know you're up to some wonderful things in your life. And I'm just thrilled to be observing them.
Thank you, Maria. I really appreciate that. Oh, thank you for this opportunity. I'm really happy that you're supporting folks in this way.
And so, people, this is the end of another session, another coaching session. You saw me do a lot of things, some of which is coaching. And as I said, at some point, giving some advice. But, really the purpose of being a coach is to support another human being to do that which is in their heart to do. And you just witnessed Carolina being very courageous in taking a first step toward letting the world know what she has to contribute. And so this is Dr. Maria signing off for right now and saying see you next time, okay? Bye for now.